There are exactly 3 moments in your financial life where everything changes. 3 tipping points where your money stops crawling and starts compounding so fast it almost feels like cheating. Most people never reach the first one, not because they can't, because nobody explained what they were actually building toward. I've spent years tracking economic data, watching how money moves through systems. And the single most important thing I've learned is this. Wealth doesn't grow in a straight line. It barely grows at all for years, and then it explodes. Today I'm going to show you where these 3 tipping points are, why they matter more than anything else in personal finance, and how to reach them faster than you think possible. Let me tell you about someone I'll call Peter. He's 28, makes $65,000 a year. He's been doing everything the personal finance world tells you to do. He tracks his spending, he cooks at home most nights, he puts money into his retirement account every paycheck. After 5 years of this, he's managed to save about $15,000, and honestly, he's frustrated. Every month he puts away a few $100, but the number barely moves. He watches YouTube videos about compound interest and millionaires in early retirement, and thinks these people must have started with money, because his account isn't compounding, it's crawling. Peter represents millions of Americans stuck in what I call the savings trap. They're doing everything right and getting almost nothing to show for it. Not because the system is broken, but because they're in the hardest phase of wealth building and nobody warned them about what it actually feels like from the inside. Here's why Peter feels stuck. $0 to $100,000 is the phase where compound interest feels like a lie. Not actually a lie, but it sure feels like one. Let me show you what I mean. Say you start saving $500 a month, you invest it in a simple index fund. You're doing everything right. After 12 months, you've got $6,000 in contributions and roughly $200 in investment returns. $200, that's a grocery run. That's not life-changing money. That's barely noticeable. After 2 years, you've contributed $12,000 of your own money and earned maybe $800 in total returns. Still basically nothing. You're doing 95% of the heavy lifting. Your money is doing 5%. I call this the contribution dominance phase. You are the engine. Compound interest is just sitting in the passenger seat scrolling its phone. This is exactly where most people quit. They look at their brokerage account after 3 years of discipline and sacrifice and think this doesn't work. The math is broken. Investing is for rich people who already had money to start with. Here's what they don't understand. The math isn't broken, it's loading. Think of it like heating water on a stove. You turn the burner on, 5 minutes go by, the water is barely warm, 10 minutes, still not boiling, you start wondering if the stove is broken. Then suddenly the whole pot erupts. That's compound interest. Nothing, then everything. But you have to keep the burner on long enough to see it. Here's what happens at $100,000. This is tipping point number 1. At a 7% annual return, your portfolio generates about $7,000 a year on its own. That breaks down to roughly $580 a month. You didn't work for it. You didn't clock in. You didn't trade hours for it. It just appeared in your account while you were sleeping. Now, $580 a month might not sound life-changing by itself, but stop and think about what it actually represents. That's a car payment every single month, covered by money you didn't earn through labor. For a lot of people, that's their phone bill, their insurance, and their gas combined, paid for by compound interest alone. And here's where the acceleration kicks in. That $7,000 doesn't sit in your pocket. It gets reinvested. So next year, you earn returns on $107,000, then $114,000, then $122,000. Each year, the base gets bigger. Each year, the returns grow faster. Let me put real numbers on this. If you're saving $10,000 a year at 7% returns, the first $100,000 takes about 7.8 years. That's nearly 8 years of grinding. But the second $100,000, only 5.1 years. You just shaved almost 3 years off the timeline, not by working harder, not by saving more. The math simply changed. That's the first tipping point. The snowball finally found a hill, and it's never going back to flat ground. The second tipping point lives around $250,000 to $300,000. And this one changes more than just your portfolio. It changes how you think. At $300,000 invested, your money generates roughly $21,000 a year. If you're still contributing $10,000 annually, your investments are now earning more than double what you personally put in. Read that again. Your money makes twice as much as you contribute. You're the passenger now. Compound interest is driving the car, and it knows the route better than you do. But the real shift at this level isn't mathematical, it's psychological. Something fundamentally changes in how you see money. You stop looking at every dollar as something to spend. You start seeing each one as a tiny employee, a worker that shows up every day and recruits more workers. Your brain literally rewires around abundance instead of scarcity. I've seen this happen over and over. People at this level start making completely different life decisions. They negotiate harder at work because they're not desperate for the paycheck. They leave toxic jobs because they can afford 6 months of runway. They take calculated bets on business ideas because a failure won't destroy them. They stop buying things to feel rich and start building things that make them actually rich. None of this happens because they read a self-help book. It happens because $300,000 in investments gives you something most people never experience. Options, real ones, not theoretical options you read about online options you can actually exercise tomorrow morning. The third tipping point is $500,000, and this is where compound interest becomes genuinely absurd. At this level, your investments generate roughly $35,000 a year. For a lot of Americans, that's a second full-time income. An invisible coworker who never takes a sick day, never asks for time off, never complains, just quietly deposits money into your account while you live your life. And here's the number that genuinely breaks people's brains. Going from 500,000 to 1 million typically takes less time than going from 0 to 200,000. Let me say that differently. The second half of the journey to 1 million is faster than the first 40%. The back half of the wealth curve is shorter than the front half. That's not a motivational poster. That's not something a guru made up to sell you a course. That's how exponential math actually works in the real world. By the time you reach 1 million, your investments generate about $70,000 a year. That's 7 times more than your annual contribution. You could stop adding money entirely and your portfolio would still grow faster than most people's salaries. This is the part nobody tells you when you're in the grind phase, saving $500 a month and wondering if it matters. It matters. Every dollar you save today is a brick in the foundation of a machine that will eventually run without you. You just can't see the machine yet because you're still building the foundation. Now, here's the part most finance channels skip entirely. These tipping points assume a smooth 7% average return, but markets don't move in a straight line. Recessions happen, corrections happen, bear markets happen, and where you sit on this curve when a downturn hits changes everything about your outcome. If you're in the grind phase with under 100,000 and the market drops 20%, you lose maybe 15 or 20 grand. That stings. It's discouraging, but you're still contributing every month. You're buying shares at a discount. Time is on your side. Historically, you recover and come out ahead within a few years. But if you're sitting at 500,000 without any defensive positioning, that same 20% correction erases $100,000 overnight while you sleep. That's 3 to 5 years of contributions evaporated before you had your morning coffee, and if you panic sell at the bottom, which is exactly what most people do, you lock in those losses permanently. This is why I track recession risk, not to scare people out of investing, the opposite, to help people protect the wealth they've already spent years building. Knowing where we are in the economic cycle isn't fear, it's just math applied to timing. And right now, the data says pay attention. You don't have to be paranoid, but you should be aware. So how do you actually hit these tipping points faster? 3 things. First, increase your income. Everyone talks about cutting lattes and canceling subscriptions, and sure, do that if it helps. But there's a hard ceiling on how much you can cut from your budget. You can only cut your expenses to 0. There's no ceiling on what you can earn. A raise at your current job, developing a skill that commands higher pay, a side project that brings in an extra $1,000 a month. Any of these compresses your timeline to the first tipping point by years, not months, years. The difference between saving $500 a month and $1,500 a month isn't 3 times longer to reach the first tipping point. It's more like 6 years versus 3. Income acceleration is the single most underrated wealth building tool. Second, automate everything. Set up automatic transfers on payday before you even see the money in your checking account. The best investors in the world aren't more disciplined than you. They just remove the decision from the equation entirely. You can't spend what you never see. Make investing the default and spending the thing that requires effort. Every paycheck should move money to your brokerage before you even open your banking app. If you have to think about whether to invest this month, you've already lost. The decision should have been made 6 months ago when you set up the automation. Third, and this is the hardest one, stay invested during downturns. When markets drop 30%, every instinct in your body will scream, sell, get out, protect what's left. But the people who hold through corrections and keep buying on the way down, they hit these tipping points years ahead of everyone else. 2008 looked like the end of capitalism in real time. In hindsight, it was the buying opportunity of a generation. 2020 felt like the world was ending. 18 months later, the market hit all-time highs. The pattern repeats. Fear creates the best prices. Patience captures them. Remember Peter from the beginning of this video? He's stuck at 15,000. He's frustrated. He feels like investing doesn't work. But now you know something Peter doesn't yet. He's in the contribution dominance phase. The hardest part, the part where it feels pointless. But if he keeps going, in a few years the math will start working for him instead of against him. And once it does, it never stops. The journey from 0 to 100,000 is brutal. It's the slowest, most frustrating, most thankless stretch of wealth building you'll ever experience. But it's also the most important thing you will ever do with your money. Because once you cross that line, the math changes permanently, and it never changes back. The snowball effect is real. It just takes longer to start than anyone wants to admit. Every wealthy person you've ever admired crossed these same 3 tipping points. There are no shortcuts around them, there are no cheat codes, but there are strategies to get there faster, and now you know what they are. If you want to understand the economic forces that can accelerate or derail your wealth-building journey, I track 29 recession indicators every single day at recessionistpro.com. Because building wealth is one thing, protecting it is another.